Hey everyone, what's up? My name is Jeanette, and today I have a very special guest. I have Dr. Will Tuttle. So, Will Tuttle is a best-selling author. He is the editor of Circles of Compassion. He's a longtime Buddhist and a former monk. And Will wrote one of the most important books, in my opinion, The World Peace Diet. And he has been vegan for over 40 years, since 1980. And we are going to talk to him a little bit. So, first of all, thank you so much, Will, for joining me. How are you doing today?
Great, Jeanette. I'm doing wonderful, and thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Yes. So first of all, Will, I just want to know, can I please ask, how old are you?
Yeah, I was born in 1953, so that's 69. Yeah, the years fly by.
Wow, you definitely don't look 69. That's amazing. Wow. So I'm wondering, like, okay, so you've been vegan for a while now, since 1980. Can you please share with us? So there's so many questions I have for you, but I want to know, what are some of the negative side effects of eating animal byproducts and their body parts? Let's just talk about the physical negative side effects first of all.
Right. Well, that's a great question, and I'm so glad that when I was in my 20s, I became a vegetarian, which is a step in the right direction. When I was, I think, my early 21 or something like that, and then a few years later, I became a vegan in 1980. So that's 42 years, like you've been saying. And I think the main benefits of moving to a plant-based way of eating, and I think it's really, besides the animal foods that are really harmful, I would say also non-organic is really important. So it's important to eat organic, whole, plant-based foods if we want to have a healthy physical body. And as far as the actual problems with these foods, as you were asking, I think probably dairy products are the most damaging, I would say, even more than the flesh of animals in terms of our physical health, because we're really not designed for them at all. We're not little calves that put on 800 pounds in a year. And so as soon as we bring dairy into our body, our body is pretty much having a hard time. And so most of the childhood problems can be traced to dairy. I myself had an appendicitis, for example. My brother was always having earaches, tonsillitis, all these different things, acne, type 1 diabetes. I mean, really, it's just an amazing benefit for the medical pharmaceutical industry that people are eating dairy products. Really, the three things, I point this out in the World Peace Diet, that people think are the best. Well, I cut out red meat, but I'm just eating a little dairy, eggs, and fish, right? Those are probably the three most detrimental foods to our physical bodies because they concentrate the most toxins. Fish really concentrate a huge amount of toxins. Everything ends up in the water. So we have PCBs, dioxins, all kinds of chemical and herbicide and pesticide residues. We have nuclear radiation now, of course. All of that ends up in the flesh of fish. And then, so eating fish and factory farmed fish are even worse because they're hyper confined in their own excrement. They're given all kinds of antibiotics. That's probably the most toxic thing you can eat. But then fish is not only eaten by us directly, which is very toxic, but then they feed fish to cows to make them give more milk and to hens to make them give more eggs. They found that if you boost the cholesterol intake of these animals who would never be eating cholesterol in the wild normally, it forces them to overproduce milk and eggs, so it's profitable. So we're getting all the naturally occurring toxins in eggs and dairy, plus all of the stuff from the fish meal that they're eating and the other toxins that they're eating. And besides the fact that all the regulations for pesticide levels for humans are about 100 times less than pesticide use for animals. So they can really spray fields of corn and soy that are fed to cows and pigs and chickens, and really it's no problem. And so we're getting glyphosate residues, for example, if we're eating animal-based foods. And glyphosate is a broad spectrum antibiotic, which really devastates our microbiome, the bacteria that live in our gut that really are essential for us to thrive and to be healthy and to digest our food, causing leaky gut, causing lots of physical problems. And the thing that we have to remember, which we're not taught in our society, is that our mind and our body are not separate. And so as soon as we start harming our physical body with toxic chemicals, with glyphosate, with also, actually, I have a whole chapter in the World Peace Diet called the Metaphysics of Food. So we're not only eating physical toxins like pesticide, herbicide, and fungicide residues and all the other stuff that ends up in animal-based foods, because they are higher on the food chain. So there's more toxic load in their flesh and secretions than you would ever get by just eating plants directly. But there's also the hormones in the food. And there's over 10,000 different drugs and hormones and antibiotics that have been approved to be used directly on these animals that are imprisoned. Or even in factory farms or in backyard operations. Some people say, well, I get my eggs from a small farm. It still could have all kinds of toxins there. And the thing is, even if they're organic, there's still naturally occurring toxins. So there's, for example, in dairy products, there's casein, which is the basic protein in dairy, which we don't have renin, which is the enzyme that calves naturally have to break down casein. We cannot break down casein very well. We don't have the enzyme for that. And so that's what really drives a lot of the autoimmune diseases that we have in our society and all kinds of problems. And so there's these naturally occurring toxins in animal-based foods, because we're not really designed for those. But then besides all those toxins, there's what I refer to as metaphysical toxins. So we're eating terror and fear and despair and anxiety and rage and panic and, all this, where these animals are experiencing chronic and acute pain and chronic and acute fear their entire short lives before they're brutally killed. And so we're eating all that misery and violence. And there's a reality to that. And I think the fact that we don't think there's a reality to it shows how disconnected we actually are from reality. So that's the thing to understand, is that as soon as we're eating animal-based foods, we're getting this whole load affecting our physical body, and then our physical body and our mental body are connected. And so one of the things that they found out, I'll just wrap this up here, is that the microbiome, which is this community of living beings, bacteria, and there's more of them than there are of us. In other words, there's something, they estimate something like 50 to 100 trillion bacteria and maybe 3 or 4 trillion human cells, right, in a typical body. So there's a lot more of them than there are of us, in the sense that they're a community, and our health depends on them. And so we have this crazy idea of antibiotics, and that somehow bacteria are dangerous and we got to kill them and get rid of them. And we depend on them for so many things, and also viruses. There's something called the virome, and there's literally decillions of viruses, way beyond trillions, just huge numbers of viruses that are also absolutely necessary for us. We've been co-evolving with them for millions of years. So this whole idea of attacking viruses and attacking bacteria is guaranteed to make a lot of money for the pharmaceutical industry, because it makes people sick. But the idea is that the microbiome is not only important for digesting our food, but also there's a major nerve called the vagus nerve, which goes directly from our gut up to our brain. And it's really, in many ways, responsible for the mood that we have, for the basic sense of well-being, of happiness, of goodwill, benevolence, joy, and freedom, and so forth. When they're happy, we're happy. So the problem is, they love to eat polypeptides, which are basically the foundational nutrients in plant-based foods. And so if we're eating meat, dairy, and eggs, they're not getting really what they need to be healthy and happy. And so the chronic depression, anxiety, frustration, and so forth that a lot of people are experiencing can be traced to many different things. But one of the things it can be traced to, I think, is the diet and eating animal-based foods, even if we're eating plant-based foods. If you're eating glyphosate, if you're eating non-organic, because basically glyphosate over the last 10 years has taken over. They spray it everywhere. It's the number one herbicide used in the world. And so we had to stop really eating at a lot of restaurants and places that were not organic, just because we don't want to be eating glyphosate. We don't want to support that system. And we don't want to destroy the healthy community inside of us. And so that's really an important point here, is that in many ways, we human beings are under attack, just like the environment is under attack. We're spewing thousands of different herbicides and so forth into ecosystems. Birds and fish and insects are dying off. Well, we're also under attack. And so it's very important, Jeanette, I think, and it's great that you're creating a forum for this, to understand that and protect ourselves and protect our loved ones, and to really support farmers who are building up the soil, who are growing organically, who are growing plant-based foods, living foods, healthy foods. The best thing is grow it yourself if you can. If you can't, then support local farmers and farmers markets. Do the best you can to grow organically. Veganically is actually the best. And the more we can do that, in other words, not use, besides pesticides and herbicides, try not to use bone meal and blood meal and fish meal and manure and all that stuff. I mean, it definitely concentrates toxins too. So the whole system is pretty weighted towards toxicity, because there's no money in healthy people, right? I mean, I'm here. I am like 69 years old. I haven't been to a doctor really to a drugstore to get anything since I figured it out recently. It was 1973 or something, when I was in college. And so it's been almost 50 years, and I just have stayed out of the system. I didn't have health insurance, didn't have anything. It's just, and I'm not saying that to brag. It's nothing to be proud of. It's just the idea is that we can take responsibility for our own health. And that's a great thing to do. You save money, and they say health is the greatest wealth. It really is. If you're healthy physically and mentally, then you can contribute to a healthy society. If we're not healthy physically and mentally, how are we going to contribute to a healthy society? We're sick, we don't have energy, we're upset, we're angry, everybody else has to take care of us. I mean, no, it's not a way to live. We should not go along with the pharmaceutical narrative and the medical narrative that if we're not feeling well, we should go and get a pill. They're always toxic. There's nothing but things in those pills that attack what your body's trying to do, the essential wisdom of your body. They try to stop that. I mean, why do you want to do that? We're trained to do this just by an educational system that's paid for by the Rockefeller, basically by the oil industry. I mean, this has been going on for over a century. So we have to do some research and realize that we shouldn't be trusting the narratives that come out of the mainstream media, and it's not that they're bad people, but it's just to understand that the whole narrative has been controlled. So that's one of the great things I think about looking into this question that you're asking. What are the negative effects of animal agriculture and eating those foods? Because it opens up this whole vision of fields. I mean, we lived in an RV for 18 years traveling around the United States. And so everywhere you go in the United States, it's these gigantic fields of genetically engineered corn and soy and alfalfa, and only about 10% of that is for people. 90% is for these imprisoned animals you never see. They're stuck away in these stinking sheds by the thousands or the tens of thousands, or in feedlots, and they eat this stuff. And so this is a war against nature. Anything that's trying to live in a monocropped field gets killed. Anything that's not corn, if it's any other plant or any animal or any insect or any fungus, anything. And the earth is the opposite of that. The earth is always trying to create life and create a celebration and have things grow. And we have animal agriculture, which is trying to kill and destroy everything that's trying to live with toxic chemicals. And those residues end up in the food and the water and the air. So health is not just about healthy food. It's about healthy water, healthy breathing, healthy emotions, healthy relationships. I mean, there's a lot to it, but food is really important too, because we are biochemical beings on one level, and food is biochemical. It's biochemical substance. So it's important to have that as a foundation, but it's also important not to be just materialistic and to realize that we're spiritual beings also, and our mind and mental, and our mind and our emotions and our relationships are also very important in the whole thing. Yeah.
Wow. First of all, you answered so many questions that I was going to ask you. So You're the best guest ever. And I want to say, absolutely, a patient cured is a patient lost. And the best way to change the world, like you said, Will, is to change ourselves and take responsibility for ourselves first and ourselves, And
Right, right.
so, and so, okay, my next question, thank you so much. Wow, that was just incredible. Yeah, I really appreciate everything you do. And I forgot to say that in the beginning. Thank you for what you do. So now my next question is, okay, why do you think some people go vegan immediately as soon as they see reality, as soon as they see a slaughterhouse video, and some people don't?
Yeah, that's a good question. Why do some people go vegan right away when they kind of get the message and they say, okay, that's it, and most people is this huge resistance, and I think the one of the reasons I wrote the World Peace Diet was to try to shed some light on that question, because it's a very important question, and I think it has to do with maybe three main things. One is the social indoctrination that we go through. So we're all born into a society, and as soon as we're born into whatever culture we're born into, we are like a little sponge and we soak up everything about that culture. Their language becomes my language. Their food becomes my food. Their attitudes become my attitudes. So we do that. We become our culture. The culture that we live in lives in us. And so my mother, my father, my teachers, my friends, my neighbors, my minister, the media, they're all eating animal food. So I do too. And so that's a wound. We have to understand that's a wound. It's not a choice. No one says, I want to eat meat. I want to eat dairy. I want to eat eggs. No one chooses that. We only do it for one reason. When we go out into the world and we see people going to a store and paying for the flesh and secretions of tortured animals, there's no one doing that on a free choice ever. They're doing it for one reason only, and that is they're following orders that were injected into them from infancy by benevolent people, right? People that wanted the best for them, wanted them to have plenty of calcium and plenty of protein. So we are deceived from infancy by well-meaning people who are also deceived. So it's important to understand that it's a cultural phenomenon. Some people, I think, when they're raised in a way where they're taught in some way to question narratives, to question things. I think that's one of the reasons I think I was able to change was my father, a couple of interesting things. My father wanted to be a doctor. And so he was a medic in World War II, and he went over to France and he was a medic in the war. And he said it was terrible to see all these wounded people. But he said the main thing he did, I remember I asked him, he didn't talk about it very much, but I said, what was it like being a medic in World War II? And he said his main job was to inject people with shots. They'd get up in these long lines and he'd stand there and just one arm after the other, he'd stab them with a shot. And he said, I don't think it was good for them, what I was doing, And then he said, just stay away from doctors. He said, our whole family said, just stay away from doctors. So we kind of had that growing up. But then he didn't become a doctor. So he bought a newspaper. When I was born, basically, or the year before I was born, he bought a newspaper. And by the time I was in college, he had built up this little empire of about 13 newspapers, weekly newspapers outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And so I was raised in the world of newspapers and the media. And so from that, I learned, don't trust the media. I mean, I know it in my bones because I would hear him talking to my mother how, well, we can't run this news story because that advertiser wouldn't like it. So I know, I can't believe people believe the media. I can't believe people believe newspapers and radio and television because I know, being raised in it, it's just whatever they want. It's whatever the advertisers want us to think. It's nothing to do with reality, really. I mean, there's a few things that are true, but most of it, the general thing. So I had this advantage, a really great advantage of being raised, and my father was always saying, he was always writing editorials. He was very opinionated, and he said, you got to think for yourself. Don't believe what anybody else thinks. Think for yourself. So I was just raised with that mantra, and so I think for me it was relatively easy. But most people don't have that kind of upbringing. I think a lot of people are raised to just get along, try to please people, do what they say, fit in. And my parents were not like that. My mother was an artist, so we were kind of extremely unusual in a sense. So I think that's one factor. Another factor I think is just the basic Spirituality, I think, is another thing that can help people. Authentic spirituality, because we're raised in a society that's based on materialism. It's based on this idea that matter is all that exists and that we're just an object that was born and will die. Like cows and pigs and chickens, we sell them by the pound. They're just objects that are born and die. If you do that for 10,000 years, which is what I talk about in the World Peace Diet, you create an entire society that is materialistic, which basically means nothing exists except for matter. And we say consciousness comes out of matter. It's like backwards. Everything's backwards. And so we're all wounded by that. And so I think that's the main problem, is that we're all wounded, and some people heal more easily than others. Some people get it more severely than others. And it's also, I think, the idea of ripening. There's like we have fruit trees. We've planted 70 fruit and nut trees in our yard here. I just was out picking.
Wait, where are you? In California?
Northern California. Yeah, we have tons of apricots right now and figs. And and nectarines are coming, and we just had plums. I've been eating so many plums and nectarines and figs and apricots. But it's interesting, they all ripen in their own time, right? Some will ripen really early, and some ripen a little later. And it's like, I don't know, some fall off the tree, some are still hanging on. You can't even get them to come off. It's like that. I mean, some ripen earlier, and that could go. It could have to do. And I think it's an important thing to bring up, even though I don't usually talk about it. But I'm going to talk about it now, which is we got to get beyond this idea that this lifetime is our only lifetime. I mean, that is a complete, from my point of view, really damaging limitation. Like this idea that we're just this object that was born and will die. And that's all there is. And this life is it. If you want to create slaves, that's what you teach them, right? You want to have people that are totally enslaved. You say, this is the only life. You better just do what we say, get what you want, get the rewards of the system, consume a lot, because everything's meaningless. We had a big bang and the universe just sort of randomly happened. And here we are randomly here in a meaningless universe. I mean, you want to have totally dumbed down, easily controlled people. You teach them that. And so we have to realize, no. I mean, we are infinite and eternal consciousness that was never born and will never die. And we're manifesting through this vehicle that can wave, but that's not us, right? This is not what we are. We are the being, the infinite eternal consciousness that makes that possible. So when we understand that, we begin, and that I think is why we need to meditate and connect with nature and have quiet time and really listen within to connect with silence and with the source of our life. When we connect with the source of our life, it's not matter at all. It allows matter. It vivifies matter. Then we realize that this experience that I'm having is very temporary. It only lasts for a few short decades. You eat a lot of sprouts and everything. Maybe you get 11 decades or whatever, but it goes by very quickly. So we're just here for a short time. And then we'll have an experience in another realm. But the thing is, we plant seeds and we reap what we sow. I mean, that's the fundamental, most important spiritual teaching there is. I mean, the golden rule, don't do to others what you don't want to have done to yourself. And whatever you sow, so shall you reap. I mean, they go together. That's the fundamental universal principles of all the wisdom traditions of this planet. And so if we live in a society that disregards that pretends that doesn't exist, that pretends we can abuse and kill and torture and sexually abuse millions of animals and go scot-free, and be healthy and happy and have peace, right? While we create misery and violence for them, that we're worthy of peace and freedom and health for ourselves. No, it's never going to happen. If we want to be healthy and free, then we should plant seeds of health and freedom in those who are vulnerable in our hands, which are the animals of this earth and other vulnerable people. We should try to help others and bless them. And if we don't do that, we're going to reap the rewards of that. So I think some people go vegan earlier because they've planted seeds in former lives, right? They understood it already, and they live in that way. And so when they hear it, they go, yeah, no problem. They just kind of remember. They remember. Other people maybe didn't have that. That's a sort of an ancient wisdom teaching more from Asia. But I know, when I lived in Asia, right? I was a Zen monk in Korea. I've spent a lot of time in Asia. And so I see it when I'm over there. The basic orientation in general, if people are are vegetarian or vegan, and you ask them why, they usually say, well, it's because I'm a Buddhist. If you see a vegan over here and say, why are you a vegan? They say, oh, because I'm a Christian. Not really, not usually because of that. So it should be. I mean, compassion and loving God's creation. I mean, all of that, it should go right together. But really, it's the religious and especially the spiritual truth within the religions that can help guide us toward veganism. So I think people who have a resonance with that will be more likely to go vegan. And people who have a general sense of kindness and caring for animals in general, I think we all have that, but it's been repressed in various ways. So I think anybody can go vegan, really. I've seen it. I mean, I've seen people that look like they would never. I had a letter a while ago from a guy who was a professional hunter, and he made money selling his articles and his photographs of killing animals to these hunting magazines. And he said, well, my wife bought your book and she started reading it to me out loud. And I just want to let you know, I'm grateful to you. I'm a vegan now, You'd never think that somebody like that would go vegan, but there's anyone can do it. Once you plant the seed, and like you said, the best way to plant seeds in other people is to work on ourselves. If we're living what veganism is, which is just love and kindness and caring for animals, we'll live that for human animals too. And we'll plant seeds of love and kindness and caring in them and be an example of health and joy and freedom and kindness. And that's the way to make the positive change. You don't make positive change in other people by criticizing, blaming, shaming them. That's never going to work. Being right, it doesn't take anything to be right. Forget being right. Just be loving and be understanding. People are wounded. Nobody's eating animal foods because of a choice. They're just doing it because they were forced into it. And now the whole society keeps reinforcing that. So we have to, as people who are not engaged in that behavior, just be happy that we're not, and be joyful and healthy and be conscious. That's the whole point. Like, be as conscious and aware as we can be, because the only reason people eat animal foods is because they're unconscious. They're not mindful. They don't know what they're doing. They're eating the flesh and secretions of tortured animals and they don't even realize it. It's about bringing our awareness and consciousness to a higher level. And then just speaking to the best in people, right? See the highest in them, see the beauty in them. And when we address that, that's what responds. And then just plant seeds, just speak our own truth. Gandhi talked about satyagraha, which means truth power, the power of truth. So if we just speak our own truth, don't try to blame them or tell them what they should do. Just say, God, I'm so glad I realized the only reason I was eating animal foods was because I was just following orders. Now I'm not doing it anymore, and it's fantastic. And then you just planted a seed because you spoke your truth, and they'll begin to think to themselves on some level, that's the same with me too. That's the only reason I'm eating animal food. Maybe I should try that. Don't try to change people. If I try to change them, they resist, and I can never get anywhere. Try to change myself. That's the one person I can change, and then other people magically start changing because we are naturally radiating something positive that will attract them.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm so glad you spoke about different lifetimes, because I often wonder if this is some type of purgatory, because there's so much suffering and violence and just greed. And in your book, you write how we will always be violent towards each other, as long as we are violent towards animals. And so I'm wondering, what do you say to someone? What is your advice to someone that feels hopeless and overwhelmed at the immense suffering that we know is happening? Like, ever since I know, I can't unknow it, and it really affects me. And so I guess this is a selfish question. What do you say to someone that feels overwhelmed and hopeless at the animal cruelty that's going on right now?
Yes, that's a very important question. And it's excruciating to open up to the level of violence that's happening every second, every moment. I mean, we're killing literally trillions of animals every year, billions of animals every day. I mean, it's like when we think of all the suffering of fish, aquatic animals, and then all the imprisoned animals, cows, pigs, chickens, turkeys, ducks, geese, all these animals. it's an ocean of suffering that is inconceivably vast, and it insinuates its tentacles into every part of our world. I mean, if you go to the oceans are getting strip mined, the rainforests are getting cut down, wildlife's getting destroyed, trees are being destroyed, aquifers are getting sucked dry, soil is being eroded and destroyed, hungry people are starving, animals are getting abused, there's a war against wildlife. I mean, it's really excruciating to contemplate. I mean, it's like, and to imagine being born, like if I was to be born as a hen in an egg operation, or if I was to be born as a dairy cow, to be just serially sexually abused, have my baby stolen over and over again, and be drugged and then hung upside down by one leg and my throat slashed. I mean, this is what we're doing billions of times. It's excruciating. So we have to understand that it's very courageous, really, for anyone in our society, which is based on like pretending that doesn't exist. It's kind of like in The Wizard of Oz, you have this curtain up and don't look behind the curtain, right? Our whole society, we're taught not to look there, because if we look there, it's so horrific. And our whole self-image of good, kind, loving, caring people who just love a good burger and cheese and so forth, it's gone. We see, like, God, look what we're doing. And so it's easy for people to become misanthropic, to say, I hate humans. I just wish everybody would die and then the animals could live in peace, right? And just start to hate humans. But that's not a good way to go. Any kind of negative emotion that we're feeling, especially towards other people, it boomerangs on us. If I'm angry or disgusted with others, it actually attacks my own body and my own happiness. So the good news is that there is an antidote to this. And that's one of the reasons I wrote The World Peace Diet. I talk about the idea that there's these 3 stages of veganism. Like the first stage is the beginning stage, when we're just trying to figure everything out. And once we get through that stage, we get to the second stage, which I call the angry vegan stage, which is very often when we just let this all in and the suffering, and we try to share this. We try to hope that people will change, and they don't change. And we get angry. We want them to change. And so that's the painful part. And it seems overwhelming, because this has been going on for centuries and for millennia. And the mainstream media and the governments and the medical industry and corporations and the banks, I mean, they're all getting rich off the whole thing. So they don't want to change it. And the people themselves, they don't want to hear about it. So we have these 2 forces. We have the people don't want to change. They don't want to hear about it. And then we have the wealthy elite. They don't want to change it either. And so here we are, a few vegans trying to change all of that. It's like, it looks really difficult. But the good news is that there's this third stage, which I refer to as deep veganism, which is when we understand the situation. We understand the history of this and the sociology, psychology, and anthropology, and all of that. And we understand nutrition, and we understand spirituality. We understand that, look, this was happening before we got here. We came. It's like the earth sent out an SOS saying, help, I'm getting mugged. The animals are, help us. So, okay, we come. Here we are. We came, we figured it out, and that's something to be happy about. We can feel grateful for that. We figured it out. Some teachers we had, probably, like for me, I learned it from some hippies back in the 70s, the farm in Tennessee. And they talked about the cruelty to animals, and they were all vegetarians. And so then I studied Buddhism, and I studied other religions, even Christianity. I figured, wow. So I can be grateful for all of that learning. And then I can realize that here I am. I can do something every day to help make a better world. I mean, that's something to be grateful for. So the 2 main things, I think, to help counteract the excruciating pain of knowing what's happening, number 1 is the wonderful truth that I can turn that pain into action. I can actually do something meaningful every day, whatever it is: writing, cooking, speaking, making videos, making music, doing cooking classes, whatever it is, sharing ideas. We can all do something to help be part of the solution. The other thing is, every day I can connect with nature and connect with the beauty of nature, and remember that even though there are billions of animals who are suffering, there's also billions of animals who are celebrating their lives right now. There's billions of animals celebrating their lives. I mean, I can look out the window and see the scrub jays flying around they're eating our nectarines. That's all right, but they're having a good time, and so there's lots of animals celebrating, and make sure to take time to notice that. Savor, if we need to be able to savor the beauty and the celebration of life on this beautiful earth. I mean, look at the flowers and the trees and the sky and the mountains and the rivers and the oceans and this amazing celebration of life. It's happening. In spite of human interference, there's still a lot of that happening. And the more we focus on the beauty and create beauty, that's why we created this space of love here where we live. It's only half an acre, but we've got all these fruit trees, we have a lot of birds, and we have insects, and it's kind of a place where there's a celebration of life, and we can do that where we are, and then from that place it can radiate out into the world. So I think it's important to again remember that even though it looks daunting, it's a workable situation, and human beings at our core have a sense of empathy. We don't like to cause suffering to others. We also have at our core a capacity for rational thinking and logic, and both of those are suppressed by our tribalism, right? We just want to get along and not think about it and not care because we don't see it. But the deeper wisdom and the capacities that we have, I think ultimately will triumph. And so this is a great opportunity, this human life, which is brief, to be part of the solution. And that's a cause for gratitude.
Wow, I love that. I took so many notes. Do something every day to be part of the solution. That is so empowering. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And then focus on the beauty and create more of it, guys. Like, that is what our purpose is here, helping other people and, focusing on the positive, creating more positive. And that makes me really feel hopeful. I'm definitely going to watch this interview every time I feel hopeless. And so I have two more questions.
Okay.
So the second to last question is, do you have hope, Will, that it will end in our lifetime? How do you feel about that?
I don't know. That's something I really don't know. It's a great question. I kind of live in the possibility that we can transform. And I do have in the World Peace Diet this sub chapter called The Last Days of Eating Animals. And the basic idea is that, well, these are the last days of eating animals one way or the other. Either it'll sort of continue to ripen the violence, and we can kind of see that happening where we have more systems of violence and control that could pretty much wipe out humanity if we're not careful with nuclear weapons and all these other environmental devastation. So that would mean the end of eating animals, right? We wouldn't be doing it anymore, and the earth would then be free of human violence. The other way, the positive way, is that we wake up and we transform the situation. And my feeling is, in general, I tend to be an optimist. I think by nature, so I have a good feeling. I mean, I think we're going through a dark kind of a birthing tunnel right now. It's a lot of stress and a lot of apparent negativity. The shadow is getting bigger, but I think that's partly because the light is getting brighter. A lot of what was hidden for decades and centuries is coming into the light. We see all these horrible things that people do to each other, pedophilia and trafficking and slavery and abuse. It's been going on a long time. And I'm thinking that it's really important more now than ever that we bring the vegan message of compassion for animals to the world, because this gets to the root of the problem. If we fail to get to the root of the problem, if we just focus only on human freedom and human peace and human so forth, and keep eating animal foods, it's not going to happen, because we're still committing all the violence towards animals, and that boomerangs back. So I do think people are getting light bulb moments where they're seeing that more and more, and that when that change kicks in more deeply, we'll see a really, like I say, a benevolent revolution happening. And I think it could happen within our lifetimes, depending on how long we actually live. But I think by 2040, 2050, it's going to be a whole different world. And I think it's imperative that we refuse to comply with any mandates that take away our freedom and that take away our sovereignty. Because what veganism is at its core is defending and protecting the sovereignty of individual beings, right? It's the individual cow and pig and chicken that we are caring about. We're not going to harm them. So it's that respect for individuals. And it's in the same way, it's respecting the individual human beings. So for us to really respect and stand up for our rights of assembly, of religion, of freedom of speech, of bodily autonomy, and all these things, not allow those to be taken away, to refuse to go along with anything that's mandating taking away sovereignty of individual humans, because it's the same basic forces that dominate and exploit animals that also dominate and exploit human beings. And they both work a lot through the pharmaceutical industry. I've realized in my research over 40 years in veganism, it's really not the meat, dairy, and egg industries that are the main enemy of animals. It's really the pharmaceutical industry, the pharmaceutical chemical industry. They really make the money on sick people and on polluting and destroying ecosystems. So they're used by the wealthy elite and the ruling class, the bankers, to kind of enslave animals and to enslave humans. So we have to be savvy. We have to be really conscious and aware and not gullible. Very aware that not to trust official narratives, especially the medical pharmaceutical narratives, and take responsibility for our health, for our relationships, for our spiritual conscious awareness, and remembering the truth of ourselves and of everyone, that we're all divine, beautiful expressions of one life. There's a fundamental unity and interconnectedness of all life. And to exercise every day, get plenty of sunshine, fresh air, good food, clean water, use filters on your water. Really, be conscious of all these things and build a healthy life. Because the final thing I'll say about that is that we can never change the outer world, right? In the sense that the outer world is what it is. What we can change is our response to it. How do we respond to living in a society where we're killing millions of animals? How do we respond to living in a society where there's a tiny elite that's basically controlling the narratives in the media and pushing people into slavery? How do we respond? And realize, not from the point of view of the narrow, separate self, but from the point of view of a being who's incarnating for a few decades on this planet, and we're here to wake up and learn and grow and contribute and be part of the solutions to the problems. Have that big picture and respond as effectively and as appropriately as we can in the situation, not out of fear, but out of love, because that's really our true nature, is love. Not just an emotional love, but the love that is arising in the awareness that there's not two of us. It's actually one life living through us. So we naturally have a sense of appreciation and loving kindness and compassion and joy, really, in seeing others and wishing them the best. And the more we wish the best for others, the more we co-create a world of peace and harmony for everyone.
Wow. Okay. I have a quick question. This is not the last question, but real quick, Will, what kind of water do you drink? Like, what kind of filter do you use?
Well, we have two things. We have a water structuring device that comes, so as the water comes onto the land here, it goes through this thing that swirls the water, because when water goes through pipes, the water itself comes from a well, but it goes through a lot of pipes. So that swirls it, because water, when it goes through pipes, all the electrons kind of line up and it gets kind of dead. It's hard. It's not very easy for our body to assimilate. And we found by running it through that structuring device, then it's more alive, so we don't need to drink as much. It's more bioavailable to our bodies, and then also for our garden. We have a food forest, and so the plants don't need as much water. It's more easily assimilated. And then once it gets into the house, we have a company, let me think, they make a really good filter, and I'm forgetting that. Oh, it's right here. I'll get it out here.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is it. It's epic filter. This is the spare one, but this I mean, that's the one we use. There's a couple of companies that make a filter that take out literally everything. I mean, really do a good job. We don't have reverse osmosis. We just run it through that filter, and we live in an RV or a little tiny van like 3 or 4 months of the year. And we have one in there, a pitcher that has the same technology. But it's good because it takes out not only the heavy metals and PCBs and dioxin, but also any pharmaceutical drug residues, which is now a big problem. People are taking so many pharmaceutical drugs, and then after they take them, they go out and through their, when they pee and poop and so forth, and it ends up in the water, and there's nothing can get rid of those. Even the waste treatment plants can't get rid of them. So it's good to have a filter that will filter all those residues, I think, nowadays. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Will. So before I ask you the last question, I would just like to tell everyone to please, if you have not read The World Peace Diet, this is one of the most important books that you will ever read. I promise you. It changed me, and I was vegan for 9-10 years before I read the book, and it changed me. So because I never thought about some things in this book, like I never thought about slaughterhouse workers before. I never had compassion for them. I didn't know they existed. I never thought of it. And so Thank you again, Will, for what you do, for everything that you do every single day to make the world a better place. Is there any other resources or places you would like to direct people to find out more about you or your works?
Thanks. I think mainly our website is a good place to start, worldpeacediet.com, or my name, willtuttle.com. It goes to pretty much the same place. And we have, my wife, Madeline, has cooking videos or food preparation videos, and we have gardening videos. I have videos of lectures and interviews and things, and also our tour schedule. We are still traveling, usually mainly in the winter months. And doing lectures around the United States, and some articles that I'm writing, new projects that we're working on, all that kind of stuff. And we have a mailing list too. So
perfect. Yeah. I will leave the links below, guys. And I'll leave a link to his book as well, and some different resources. And last question, real quick. So if I put headphones on everyone in the world, and I translated your voice into every single language, okay? So every single person in the world, what would you say? What is a message that you would like to send about anything at all that you think everyone needs to hear today?
Right. I think the main message I have in my heart nowadays is to question all the official narratives about food and about what's happening in the world in general. Not only in the media, but that are also in our own minds, and to take time every day to be quiet and listen within and connect with our own inner wisdom, and let that guide us in our life. I think if we all do that, we will definitely co-create a beautiful world of harmony and peace together.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That is amazing. And I'm definitely going to do my part every single day to be part of the solution. And I hope to inspire you guys watching to do the same. I know this was an amazing interview. I'm sure you are going to probably watch it again like me to get everything from it and to take more notes. And thank you so much, Will, for being you and for being in this lifetime with us to show us what's possible, and also giving us solutions to things that they don't teach us this stuff in school, So
exactly.
So
yeah. Well, thank you. And that's an important point, because it's not just about critiquing a system that's violent and unhealthy and destructive. We have this wonderful solution of whole, organic, plant-based foods and connecting with our connection with nature and our inner wisdom with each other, and we can definitely transform this. We're not an evil or stupid species that's just malevolent and destructive. We have just been deceived. We've been deceived, and the whole idea is to reconnect with the truth and the freedom and the wisdom within ourselves, and share that with others. Don't rely on the mainstream media. Rely on this kind of media, and we can definitely transform our world.
Thank you so much, Will. Have a beautiful day. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.